Brian Lewis is the highly respected chef and owner of two great Westport restaurants, The Cottage and Oko. He's also a James Beard Award finalist and a key figure in the Fairfield County culinary scene. So, Brian, welcome to 06880, the podcast.
Thank you so very much, Dan. Love to be here.
It's great having you, and did a little research, and I see that your route to the kitchen started on the football field.
Yes, funny enough. And the football field is still under my feet just as a coach now with my kids.
So you're playing, and then what happened?
So it was a kind of a knee injury and a bit of a growth spurt at the same time exacerbated that same injury. And I was 13 years old. I'd been playing all sorts of sports my whole youth, and I was just sidelined and
Devastated?
Yeah, and I could. What's that?
Devastated.
Devastated. I just couldn't do it, and I couldn't get out there with my friends and do all the things that I love to do, every type of sport, and with an abundance of energy, which I still have to this day. I'm blessed with. I found my way into a different sport, a different team in particular, which is this really awesome world of cooking that I just fell in love with. Just at like 13, going into 8th grade. Yeah.
Who introduced you to it?
So I grew up in Somers, New York, in northern Westchester, and there was this amazing restaurant called Mona Trattoria, and it was this restaurant from northern Italy. The family they were all from Bologna, and I had heard all these rumblings about these amazing, like kind of upperclassmen high schoolers that were doing these really cool things with back then. This is in the 80s, right? Early 80s, with cooking, and to me, I don't know what struck me to go and just kind of like peek in. I had a buddy that was a dishwasher there. I remember that. And I peeked in the kitchen, and this gentleman by the name of Tom Elia, who was a football coach at Iona. And kind of long story short, I was like, throw me in, coach. I'd just like to get, so to speak, get a taste of it and see. One thing led to another. I started, doing what many of us in the cooking field, the culinary field do, which is get right into like washing dishes, and then you start prepping. But I took such I was just mesmerized because it was right there. The dish pit, as we call it, was right there to see every bit of the kitchen, and I was just sit there, and it was like watching my Friday Night Lights. It was like watching these super cool dudes, these really cool, like like older guys that had the world on fire right there. And I was just captivated by it. And I started volunteering on my own, coming in after school, also with Mona, the matriarch of the establishment. She'd be down in the basement making all of her different pastas and grating cheese. It was like a task that I hoped that I could get to do. So great copious amounts of cheese and dry breadcrumbs and sweep the floor. So that's and I would do it on my own time. And then eventually I got paid for that because, that's just the way it would work back then. And just kind of, it seems and sounds super romantic in the scheme of things as a way to like, I grew up I'm Irish with an amazing mom who cooks, but I didn't hang on her coat or apron strings, if you know what I mean. But Mona in particular, that was someone that I could really aspire and kind of be, enamored with what she was doing. And she taught me how to make the little tortellinis, the famous tortellinis with the bolognese sauce and all of that. And then I ended up working throughout all of high school and when I went to there, as well as the Culinary Institute of America. I'd come home on weekends and work there. And it just became a family to me.
So you both Culinary Institute of America and Johnson & Wales.
Yes, I was fortunate. My stepfather, Larry, who was amazing in my life with my mom in terms of supporting me in my, since I was a kid, that age, Larry, my stepfather, was immediately, he was a bit of a gourmand himself and really enjoyed, all of those things and was a great inspiration and support and afforded me the opportunity to go to pursue a bachelor's degree, which also in parentheses was a great, college education.
Sure.
Well, no, I mean like fun education. Like we had culinary school was super focused and like very serious. And then, but it didn't have like sports and all the things around it that, you know, a typical college experience
Yeah.
would have. And I had worked all my way through high school. You know, so much of my life was working, right? Which is fine. It's my sport. But when I got to Johnson and Wales, I worked a little bit, and then I met a bunch of really cool guys that I'm very dear friends with to this day, and joined the rugby team, and didn't look back, and had a really good college experience, as well as a great education. But it didn't.
In a great food city.
Yeah, well, it's become amazing. I mean, I can't wait to go back. Actually, in the next few months, Providence in particular. Yep. Yeah, it's really kind of blown up. You know. Just in Rhode Island and just that whole kind of New England area. It's nice being part of it.
So how'd you end up in Westport?
So it's so I had moved back. The boy's mom, my now ex-wife Dana, who's a wonderful mom and still a good friend to this day. We moved back to take on the Bedford Post Inn as my with Richard Gere. That was my original comeback. We moved back from the West Coast, from out west. And it was kind of a homecoming because, like I say, I grew up in Somers. So I ran that for 4 years, and then he's giving you a little bit of history. And then, you know, we moved to Wilton, and I was just fell in love with the area. And then I had a restaurant in New Canaan for a few years, and left that venture. And at that point, I was like, where else could I possibly find where I could put my stakes, you know, my flag in the ground and make my, you know, my dreams come true, so to speak, and cook my heart out, right? At the level of where I've worked in the past, New York City, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Europe, and have the balance of life that was so important to me with my children. Because at that point, we had the most important everything to me, which were my twin boys, Jude and Jax, and they were about 5 months old at the time. And I set out, you know, I thought about it for a minute. Do I work in the city? Because that's where you can really practice your craft at the level that I'm, you know, that I expect of myself. But at the same time, I was having great success in Bedford at the Bedford Post Inn, and to a strong degree in New Canaan. I just felt it was a bit insular for me. It's a great town. Love New Canaan as well. But living in Wilton, I looked toward Westport. Came to me by a gentleman by the name of Chris Tate, which I'm sure you know.
I know Chris.
Yeah, he actually, while I was on my hunt, you know, and I was looking at various markets, he actually suggested, if you remember, was it Positano?
Sure.
Yeah, and you look at that space. I don't know, you know, if your viewership, I'm sure, knows of that space or what it was, what it is. I don't know, but it was like, oh yeah, I'm on it. This is like this beachfront spot, and I met a really
that is the spot now of the famous Blue House. On Hills Point Road.
Right, and it sits right on the sand. I mean, I don't know if there's another one on the coastline that does that. Meaning up all the way up the coastline. There's maybe a couple. So. Chris was amazing. You know, he's ultimately the reason I ended up coming to town, because that started it really narrowed my focus, because I was looking up and down, you know, for, you know, funding, investors. I was on my own. And I don't like asking, you know, it's not my habit to ask for money, you know, like ask for funding. So, but I put a really great business plan together and you know, started out on my way to being, you know, a restaurateur. And that was the muse. That was the place that I was considering and strongly, you know, shaping this business plan around. And there were and I had a couple really awesome gentlemen that were interested, that lived in the community there. And you know, sometimes, and I truly believe this, the best deal that you make, is the one that doesn't. The best deal is the one that doesn't happen.
Okay.
And that one, you know, as you can see now, I didn't lose out to a restaurant that came in and made a killing, because there were too many barriers to pursue and to accomplish that. So, but what it set in motion was my immediate, like, this is my town. This is where I'm going to be. This is where I want to open a restaurant. And you know, Westport, because I.
What was it about Westport that?
Sorry. well, in that exploratory experience, I did a lot of due diligence, right, in looking everywhere else at the same time, for other real estate. It's a wonder I didn't knock on your door at home, seeing if you were renting out your back porch, because I was pretty determined to, So I looked at a half dozen spaces. And I became very good at looking in, and I can imagine a space, even if it's not an actual restaurant, and how to transform it into a restaurant. Oftentimes, or most of the time, you can't, because there's zoning, things that prevent it, but which is understandable. So I had Bill Taby and I, were friends, and we'd contemporaries of one another, and he was crushing it with the Welk, and I think he had maybe just opened Kaiwani, I'm not sure. And he and Massimo, great guys, they reached out to me. So after the deal was kind of, realized it wasn't a deal to pursue at the beach, and kind of picked up, I was bummed out, I really wanted it, but again, best deals are the ones that don't work out, right? Oftentimes. And I was looking at another space, the one on the I forget the name. It's on the basement of the town hall. The
Walrus Alley.
Yeah. So I was looking at that. Again, another deal that just went someone else's way. And I was, but every time I did that, every time I went through the experience of putting 100% of me into the business plan, and into the finding all the right things, and how I could create a beautiful experience, a beautiful space that could provide beautiful experiences, and I could really just raise my kids and be in this community, in a community 15 minutes from my home. That's the most important part, right? Like, if I could, if I'm super happy in my day-to-day, and I'm so blessed to not have to drive to this, I don't have to go to the city, I don't have to commute. I have I go up and down the 95 now, but for other restaurants, but to be able to just focus so specifically on this one spot. And I was looking at that, and then that eventually went to someone else. Again, works great for them, and it wasn't my time. And then after really 10 months, almost a year, and this is a great part of my story, or our story with the kids. Every day I'd be out looking in the space, and they'd be in my backseat, little three. I had them for 10 months where I wasn't working specifically. I was doing consulting, but I had all this time dedicated to looking for a space. And they went to every single space and every single meeting, for the most part, either sleeping or just rocking them in a thing, or what have you. And that is a huge part of our story together, where they weren't obviously aware of it because they were 10 months old, but knowing that that's the grit, if you will, that I happily was in. And, through the good and the bad. And then eventually, as I started to mention, Bill and Massimo reached out, excuse me, and wanted to see if I was interested in buying not the business of La Farm, but the space, and taking it over. And that was like, wow, we were like, well, contemporaries, we're direct competitors with each other too, stylistically and all of that. But the answer was an immediate. I could, I went in there, and it was this little space, if you remember, before I expanded it. And it took us a few rounds of back and forth, and then we took a little, the way normal business dealings go, right? So it took a few months. And long story short, I ended up with Bill making a deal that worked for everybody. And it had the contingency with the landlord, who was wonderful. The landlords are great, really great person to have, where at the right time, when they're ready, I could take over the adjoining space, which was an old barber shop. But it wasn't guaranteed, and it was just and there was an existing tenant, and they're Mark Nevis is an incredible landlord, and was going to do the right thing for his current tenant. So I had to just wait. Yeah. And so I went in there. We did a beautiful transformation, and it was this tiny little spot, 30 seats, and I'm used to a lot bigger stage.
See.
And it was a humbling experience for me in the sense of, and a really major growth spurt for me as a chef, by way of that humbling experience. Sure.
And the rest is history with the cottage. And then Oko, which is a very different space and different concept.
For sure. I mean, we just in tying up the cottage, we had that. We after 3 months, we got this love letter review from the Times, which changed the game.
Yeah, an excellent rating, and the
It
Times throws that around like
it was awesome.
manhole covers.
Well said. So that somewhat pushed the timeline and allowed us to open up and do the transformation next door and add the bar, which really changed the game from the, because it just opened up the opportunities for us. But I was in there cooking, 7 shifts, 6, just nonstop, just right there cooking, again, my heart out. And it allowed us the opportunity to grow the company. And I knew I wanted to do something, again, in Westport. I have always loved Japanese cooking. I've always loved the Japanese ingredients. But you can only, in my opinion, in my view, do those types of experience, that type of cooking in an otherwise American style restaurant, which the cottage is, which is open for interpretation as far as what's American cooking, right? But otherwise, it gets an identity crisis. So I started off by doing, let me just play around here, and I did this little omakase at the cottage as a pop-up within, right? Very reasonably priced, 8 courses, and I just went back there and I self-taught, right? And I dove in. And then I knew that I wanted to, my business partner, I have one amazing business partner, and I said, hey, I know it might be early to expand, but what do you think about this? And he was like, I'm all in. All right, cool. And then Gene Gorab, this amazing guest that used to come to our restaurant, who comes to the restaurants a lot, was at the time the landowner over at the current space of Oko, and we had a quick introduction when I saw that, or not introduction. I brought up the idea, and because I saw it was for lease, and it was a little bit of work that we had to do to go to like planning and zoning, and the historical committee, which our architect Rick Hogue did a phenomenal job with. And we created what I like to think is just the most unique and really cool space with that firehouse. Like, that's a restaurant tour and chef's dream to have a firehouse right on the road.
Right on the water.
Yeah, it's really super cool. So I went to Japan for a month and studied under a couple really extremely gracious chefs. And that just, that's just a beginning point. Right?
So I want to, obviously, to get to your other part of your life.
Yeah.
But I do want to ask you about the culinary scene in Westport.
Yeah.
How do you characterize it? Strengths, weaknesses?
Culinary, current day, I would say it is, having been here 10 years now, in Westport, which is incredible. Blink of an eye. It is no surprise. I don't know if I have one word other than amazing. It is from, Lower Westchester up to Mystic, or Providence for that matter. I would say I would put this against Providence.
Wow.
Yes, I would.
For
restaurants. I mean, obviously there's more there. Yeah. I would put this Mystic, Providence, certainly Westchester, as a county, but this as a town. I mean, it just has such incredible density of offerings of talented chefs, and it's not slowing down. So competition, right? Competition is fierce, and I love it.
Good,
and I love it. I love it because it keeps you pushing yourself. I mean, I compete with one person more than anyone I'll ever compete with in my life, and that's myself.
Yourself,
right? Yeah. And I put my head down, and and of course with my staff, we just try to literally focus on our very best work that we can do at all times. But there's such a new, I don't know the demographic or the data on the post-COVID like increase in folks from Brooklyn and the upper, and New York City coming here, but that has certainly shaped, in my view. I live in Wilton as well, with like Rise Donuts and like how it's got a line of 50 people out the door all the time. That's fantastic, right? That style.
So they come in with expectations.
Yeah, I've always believed then that your guests help truly define you in terms of the way you cook, in so much that their validation of what you do just gives you keeps giving you the green light. So as I cook, as I explore and create and evolve, which is central to what we do. If they're going to speak out, guests are going to speak out by way of just their actions of how they, their purchasing patterns, right? Their dining patterns. And, when there is and also just simply the way you walk through the dining room and you see their tine, you don't hear anything but their tines hitting the of their fork hitting the plate. And it could be something, way outside the box of what they're used to having. Like I work with Hunter Peterson, and he's this wonderful gentleman,
Shellfish.
amazing guy. And we've started bringing, all these really cool, like invasive species and things that people aren't used to having, but I'll layer them into the menu. I'll create ingredients from them that are, number one, using the product. Number two, that's the most important part, using the product and creating that opportunity for him for Hunter and that relationship. Slipper limpets, right? Like the sea snails. That's the buzz of the day. Like that's the fashionable foraged sea item right now, which I treat in a way that I get to use. Like I make a stock from it, and I use it in various forms and guises. And guests don't necessarily need to know that they're eating. It's not. I'm not hiding it from them. I'll just use some poetic license in the way I communicate it. But bringing those types of ingredients, bringing all of these, and they're right here at Saugatuck River, or on this coastline. So that's how I compete, right? I compete with myself by just pushing myself.
Sure.
And the guests' acceptance of that allows me to keep growing. And I use the chicken Caesar salad model as an example. That's that's the suburban kind of, and I do say that in the pejorative because it could be good, by the way, a chicken Caesar salad. We do a really interesting version of that in Greenwich, but it's that kind of ubiquitous, I just want this, right?
Yeah.
At which every chef is like, oh no, that's not what I want to become. I'm not speaking for every chef, but it's just generally speaking, when guests are just leave it in our hands and are super enthusiastic for the experiences that are being created here to be absolutely tantamount or comparable to a New York City experience or a San Francisco experience. That to me is so the consumer, the guests in Westport are happily responsible for the outcome of all of these amazing new restaurants opening.
So if you're not eating at one of yours, where do you go?
Perfect. In Westport specifically?
Yeah.
Well, I have to give a shout out to Wilton for Rise because I'm a big fan of his His name is Yu. He's just a great guy and incredible work. And I love Casami and Filamente. I never know if I'm saying it correctly. I'm a big fan of, and needless to say, I go to all of Bill's restaurants. I mean, the top of the line right there. Sure. Bill's restaurants, and now Massimo and Bill have a shared ownership, I think. But big fan of what he does.
Right.
Yeah, it's been really awesome to take, by the way, a legacy that he had with LaFarge and turn it into a new one.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really fun.
So we were talking before about your sons.
Yeah.
And I know you're coaching them in flag football, and that is a whole different experience for you.
Yeah. So my boys Jude and Jax are 11, and they are, everything to me. And they're extremely passionate about football, and they want to be in tackle, and they will get there in 9th grade. Those are their mom and my kind of rules.
Sure.
And I believe that flag is it's teamwork, it's great sportsmanship, it's athleticism, and they can accomplish it's an amazing sport unto itself, and a great precursor to tackle. And I didn't, so not many people know this or could believe it, but I didn't follow. Now, up until 4 years ago, I had never watched a single game of anything in my own, like on my own doing. I'd be in the room, but I just never had an interest. I was the guy in college where all of my rugby, friends and housemates would be, watching some game, and I'd be like in the kitchen making like vanilla scented brioche, and but happily. And it just wasn't my, I'd be always, into fitness and all things like that, but I never had the attention span to like sit in front of the TV. And now, 5 years ago, I became was super interested in coaching their flag because there was a need in our town that needed some coaches. So I learned the sport inside and out. Football I knew, but as far as coaching, I'd never done that.
Sure.
So I also had to understand. But even when I was a kid, like I never watched sports. It was just not my thing. I loved to play, but I just didn't have that fandom
Sure.
about me. And I bring that up because now I am a season ticket Jets ticket holder. I think this is where your viewership just turns the TV off.
They're saying, "Wait a minute, we liked Brian."
No,
what's wrong with him?
There's a very strong following of Jets.
But so talk about the similarities between a kitchen and a sports team, or coaching, working in the kitchen and coaching a team.
I will say that no doubt I have become an absolutely better businessman, and leader in my kitchens. As a chef, as I've been both a father and a coach, coaching kids and the patience, which I actually find I have believe it or not, an abundance of, and the strategy. I actually, really, what I've come to find from everything in my life right now, I'll tie in this one kind of anecdote, is not trying to chase perfection, such as the championship, right? That would be, if there's such a thing as perfection, which I don't believe there really is. In chasing a championship, that's all right. We got there's nothing more to get, right? Or in chasing, a James Beard award.
Yeah.
All along the way, it's about not perfection for me. It's about adaptability. I would rather teach my children, and they demonstrate adaptability in more ways than I can count. And that is far greater of a skill set that I've come to adapt. And certainly, COVID hit. Adapt and overcome was the file for all of my work that I did to get out of that in terms of reopen restaurants, stuff like that. So, and that's when I started coaching, a little before then. And I just find that central theme of adapt. I mean, you're adapting on the second in sports, right?
Yeah.
When you're coaching, when you're seeing the moment, when you're reacting and or simply creating plays or coaching your child or your players out of really kind of icky feelings, which is tons of. And there's a lot of those feelings as an adult in a kitchen, right? So how I coach people in my kitchens and bring them out of those feelings, or it's we have 100+ employees in the company, and there's a dozen, 14 kids on the field, and so much of that I apply the coaching more into my business world and my culinary world than anything.
So the boys cook?
Jude, yeah, I think the answer is yes for both of them. But Jude, he's you can tell there's something. I will leave it open for both of them to do whatever they want in life as long as they're passionate and happy about it, and give it their all, kind of thing. But Jude likes to cook, and he'll eat literally anything. And if he doesn't like it, he won't have it. If he likes it, sea urchin, name it, he'll have it. Yeah. Jax is more, your chicken finger.
So last question. Yes. This is great. I or any of our viewers come into Cottage and Oko. What do we order?
Whew. So the Cottage, I have this. That's so hard. Cottage, I have a 10-year tasting that we do, which is we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary, which is incredible. So we have kind of a call in advance, and we'll do a 10-year tasting for you. I'm going to give you a multi-answer question. There's no way I'm giving you it's like asking me which is my favorite son, kind of thing.
Right.
And that's like a real cool exploration or expression rather of just my heartfelt cooking and some dishes we've done and some just brand new inspirations. And we also have a 3-course farmers market menu, which is a celebration of the farmers market here in Westport, which is we're massive supporters of Lori and all that they're doing at the farmers market. And then our Wagyu beef bun, right? That has been on since day one. I would probably be asked to leave town if we took it off. That is like the go-to. But I'm also a huge fan of yeah, everything on the menu. So I would say that's the emblematic dish.
Sure.
And then at Oko, we have an omakase, but we spin it and call it an okokase, which is a multi-course, anywhere like 16 small bites courses of our celebration of the omakase, which means the chef's selection menu. And I would say any type of sushi that we have a 5-piece or a 10-piece tasting that you can order, which sells like crazy, as well as our hand rolls. But importantly, we also have like a really beautiful non-sushi orientation to the menu. So if you don't even eat fish, you can have like our sticky ribs are pretty off the charts too.
Great. You have made everyone watching this very hungry.
Cool. That's my job.
It's great. Brian Lewis, congratulations on your coaching, on your James Beard finalist.
Thank you.
On your 10 years at the cottage.
Appreciate
it. I guess I said that was the last question, but I've got another one.
Yeah.
Any new restaurants in the works?
Yes, we have a third brand that it's in me head right now, and more to follow. So there's another concept that we're looking at introducing. I'm not 100% sure of the market yet, but it'll be nearby.
Okay,
let's say that much.
Sounds good. Stay tuned. Brian Lewis, thank you for coming on 06880 the podcast.